And very recently, the end of last month, I got a Twitter DM from a mutual follower, and she had mentioned, and I don't know that this is true, she may have been hijacked as well, but she mentioned that she was in the process of possibly getting on major podcasts and wanted my vote. It was like a voting situation. And, it was a stupid and silly thing to do, but I clicked through the link and it asked me to log in to Twitter. And so I did. And subsequently, my account got hacked.
You're tuning in to Unorthodoxing, the political talk show where uncommon politics finds common ground. Every week, you'll get news analysis from Mike Vick, an activist in the progressive pro-life movement with 20 years of experience in politics and journalism, as well as interviews with outside the mainstream guests you won't see on the nightly news. Get ready for an unorthodox experience.
Well, good evening, folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the Unorthodoxing podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. The interesting announcement to make this week. A lot of good things have happened this week. A lot of very weird and bad things have happened this week. And the biggest thing to announce, and you all will not really maybe even notice this unless you follow me closely on Twitter, or as Elon likes to call it, X. I have refused to call it that for the most part, because I'm not a fan of Elon Musk. And I always thought that Twitter was a cool, name for an app. And it had a unique brand. The bird was very cute, but, I've had a love-hate relationship with Twitter for a long time. Twitter has been both a blessing. I literally got a job once out of Twitter. I worked as a freelancer for a publication called The Canary in the UK. Many of you in America would probably not recognize that name, but it's well known in leftist circles in the United Kingdom, and it had at the time been most associated with the Labour Party and Jeremy Corbyn. And I was, really enjoying working there. This was back in 2018. But I found that job through Twitter. I've been followed by a crazy number of really cool people out there in the world. Brianna Joy Gray followed me, of Bernie Sanders fame. She was his second press secretary and is really big on the left. And I really enjoy her work. Other folks have followed me weirdly, out of nowhere. Wyclef Jean, of all people, followed me. And he never really ever tweeted anything at me, ever retweeted me, ever interacted with me in any way, shape, or form. I don't even know for sure that he still follows me. I haven't checked in a long time. But that was a weird, moment, when someone that famous follows you on Twitter. And occasionally I've had, semi-famous people in politics and in media follow me, and it's been an experience. And just regular people reaching out and retweeting, and the work that I've done there in building up that account started really in 2016, maybe even as far back. I think it was as far back as 2015. And funnily enough, it started with the Bernie Sanders campaign. I was, and still am in many respects, a supporter of Bernie Sanders. Although of course I am pro-life and more conservative socially than he is. and am a theologically conservative Christian, but I like a lot of his politics, and I like a lot of what he was trying to do in the Democratic Party. And so, was I started out as a supporter there, and I started getting involved in Twitter more during that campaign. Initially, I had, and still have to this day, a personal Twitter account that I don't normally use. And I follow a few of my close friends there, people that I know personally, and I have started to follow a few political, people and groups there, but I rarely tweet there, so I just don't really use it that much. But I did and still do use the account that started out as Superman for Bernie. Now, I am a Superman fan. I remain that to this day. I love the character. And at the time, I had seen on Twitter there was someone who was called Batman for Bernie. I thought that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll see if there's anyone out there that's Superman for Bernie. So there wasn't, and so I created. And for the longest time, I mean, it sounds silly, but I pretended to be Superman and pretended to be Superman supporting Bernie Sanders. And it was an anonymous account for a very, very long time, for many years, actually, even after that campaign. And I don't know, it was probably around about 2018-ish that I decided to make it not an anonymous account. And, I switched it over. Now, of course, I have a famous name. I share the name with the football player Mike Vick, which, he's not just famous, he is in some respects infamous, which we'll talk about a little, during this campaign, just to poke a little fun at myself. But in any event, no, I am not that Mike Vick. But because of that, it's difficult sometimes to find a handle, that hasn't already been used. Well, one of them that wasn't used yet was Mike Vick News. And so I became Mike Vick News on Twitter. And then I decided to run for office, and I wanted to have a separate account for that run for office. Some people don't do it that way. They just use the account that they've had all along, and maybe that would have been, a good idea, or maybe what I did was a good idea. But I did start a new account, and it was called initially Vote Vic 2020. Now that turned out to be not such a good idea because I wanted to keep that account going. And, I ran for office as a pro-life Democrat in 2020. Many of you know that. And that was the last year that I thought of myself as a Democrat still, although I, still support some Democrats and have still worked for, most importantly, the campaign of Pastor Chris Butler when he ran as a Democrat in 2022. But I don't anymore consider myself a Democrat, but at the time, again, I was running for office that way. And, I was not going to win that race. It was a very red district, but I enjoyed the race, and I enjoyed meeting people there in Indiana's 29th district, where I lived at the time. And so again, at that time I was Vote Vic 2020. And that was my original website. It was VoteBic 2020. I actually no longer even have access to that email address or that website. Not that I needed it afterward, but I thought of other things. Initially, I was VoteVic in, VoteVic IN for Indiana, and also, of course, VoteVic in would be a phrase that you could use. But then I moved, and so I decided to make it VoteVic USA. And that has become where I put politics out there in the world everywhere. But I still had Mike Vick News, and I sort of retained that. It was a larger account. It had like 3.7 thousand followers. It's not huge, but it was larger than VoteVic had ever been. VoteVic at most had, about 2,000 followers. And so I kept up Mike Vick News. Sometimes I would tweet more from one, sometimes the other. A lot of times I would tweet more like journalistic pursuits. I do have a background in journalism, so I would tweet more about that. But when I ran for president very briefly in 2024, in the Solidarity Party primary, I had planned to make that one account at least a blue check mark account. And some of you know what a blue check mark is. You're involved in Twitter. It was a verified thing. And so I did that. And this was around the time that blue check marks were being open to everyone because Elon had taken over Twitter, and wanted to, do his capitalist thing and raise money through it. It used to be, you had to get verified, through a process, had to be a notable person, quote unquote. But now everyone could do it for, $7 a month or $11 a month, whatever you spend. There are more expensive versions of it, of course. But initially, a bot, kicked me off of that account because it permabanned that account, initially. And it said that account was in violation of Twitter's rules because it had overlapping purposes with my other account, Mike Vick News. And that's just not true. I never used them for super overlapping purposes. And a lot of, politicians, like the, real elected politicians, quote unquote, use different accounts for their campaigns versus their actual either personal account or the account that they use as a government official. And so that seemed perfectly reasonable to me, and many people had done it. So that's how I did it. And it took some time, but I was able to, get a real person at Twitter support to help me out with that. And that account got unfrozen. And so I kept the blue check for a little while, and then I just let it go. I was running later in that same cycle for Congress, and a very symbolic race here in Illinois, in the 2nd district. But I let the blue check go. But I kept up both accounts. And of course, now I have, I've had a Substack for a long time. I am the contributing editor of the Civic Update here in Chicago, which is a AND campaign publication for the AND campaign in Chicago. And I started my own Substack, of course, which is where some of you may be listening to this. And, you can find that on unorthodoxing.com. And, others are listening to this in other places. Of course, this podcast is available on YouTube and on Spotify and on Apple podcasts and on Amazon Music as well. So it's available, as they say, wherever you get your podcasts, and I post clips of it online. But Twitter is one of the places where I kept it on Mike Vick News because it made sense. That was a journalistic pursuit. Well, recently I'm again running for office, and so I put a blue check on VoteVic USA, and I decided to put one on Mike Vick News as well. And very recently, the end of last month, I got in a Twitter DM from a mutual follower, and she had mentioned, and I don't know that this is true, she may have been hijacked as well, but she mentioned that she was in the process of possibly getting on a major podcast and wanted my vote. It was like a voting situation. And, it was a stupid and silly thing to do, but I clicked through the link and it asked me to log in to Twitter. And so I did. And subsequently, my account got hacked. Essentially, I stupidly gave my credentials over to a hacker. And as a result of that, I lost access to the account. Now, initially, I tried to get access back to that account, and that was proving very difficult. Twitter X support was not helpful at all. And, I tried in multiple different ways to explain to them and to prove that I was the owner of the account. And initially they said, well, you still have access to it because you have access to the email. Well, the email had been changed to this gobbledygook email. And it should be obvious to anyone looking at it. Now, I don't know how many real humans, if any, actually looked at the emails that I was sending and how much of this is automated by bots. But in any event, I could not get support from Twitter, from X. And then they told me that I needed to wait for a week to try again, to submit another support ticket. Well, 4 days into that week, I was upset. I sent them an email saying as much about this, but I waited and the account was still there. I just couldn't get access to it. So I assumed eventually I would be able to regain access to the account. Well, lo and behold, 4 days in, the account got either, it doesn't say that it was suspended. It says that it was deleted. Now, I don't know if this was Twitter doing this or if it was the hacker doing it, when they maybe couldn't themselves get access to the account. But it was deleted, and that, caused a lot of heartache in a lot of ways. It's funny to say it that way, but, I put a lot of work into this for 6 years. And, in some respects, I used it more than the larger account. And so anyway, long story short, I tried to tell Twitter about this problem, and, it fell on deaf ears, despite the fact that I feel like everything that I was doing should have proven that I'm the person who had rightful access to this account. Well, I don't know if I'll ever get those tweets back. But in any event, I was able to get the handle back. And I recently, today, switched the handles. So, if you go to VoteVic USA right now, it will be seamless, at least for you on your end. It's been a hassle for me, and it's still a little bit of a hassle. But you should, now see a larger account, 3.7K followers. Now, most of the followers were the same, most of the, almost 2,000 people that follow the VoteVic USA account follow the Mike Vick News account and will, going forward, follow VoteVic USA. But some of them are different. So I will have lost some followers along the way. I'm sorry about that to anyone who was following me in good faith and would like to follow me, still. I'm going to have to organically find you again. I'm sorry. But, or, vice versa. But please do follow me. If you come across that account, please do follow me at VoteVic USA. I'm probably going to try to switch the other account, this smaller account that I use, to just regain access to that handle, to Mike Vick News, just in case there are links out there floating around somewhere so that people know where to follow me. But hopefully that fixes the problem. And hopefully, I won't have this issue again. But, right now I'm having issues because I had to change the password of logging in to other places where I'm Twitter. So I just wanted folks to know about that. Now, I am going to have a larger episode out very soon. I interviewed my friend and my running mate, Gary Johnson. So be on the lookout for that. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Unorthodoxers, for continuing to follow me, for continuing to follow this campaign for governor at VoteVicUSA on Twitter and on everywhere else you can find me online. So you can find that all of that at VoteVicUSA.com. You can reach out to me at mike@VoteVicUSA.com. And of course, always, you can check out everywhere I'm online, the many places I am terminally online at linktree.com/VoteVicUSA. So thank you so much again, Unorthodoxers. Until next time, you stay faithful.